Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's Strength in Numbers session. We're talking about healthy hearts and how healthy hearts start with healthy habits. So today's objectives are that we are going to report on last month's goals that we set and discuss challenges that we might have encountered as we were working towards them. We will also set SMART goals at the end of today's session. So make sure you're thinking about what you want your goal to be. Could be the same thing, it could be something totally new. And we will discuss ways to decrease the risk of heart disease. Because if you're listening to this session in the month that it was recorded, it's February now. And February, is Valentine's Day. We're thinking about hearts and love and those things. So the topic kind of goes along with this month's theme. And if you're listening to it outside of February, that's okay too. It's always a good time to prioritize our heart health. So this is the part of the session where I really want you to take some time, and that may mean hitting pause, but I want you to take time on what your goal was last month if you were able to set one, and how did that go? Reflect on that. Did you have barriers? Did you achieve your goal? If you didn't, and you did have barriers, then think about what those were and how you can plan for that in this coming month so that you can set yourself up for success. And sometimes it's we set too lofty of a goal that's just not possible for us to meet. If we're realistic with our calendars, it could be the weather. It could have been you got sick, you had company, and all sorts of things get on our way. But as we go, it's important to learn from that and figure out how we can work around it. Maybe you could take your company with you for a walk if that was your goal, or maybe, you exercise indoors or do something different to work around those things that pop up because we want to just get better and learn from these barriers as we go. So with that, make sure again, hit pause, go over those previous goals and really reflect on that and celebrate what you did accomplish because I'm sure that you accomplished something over the last month, whether it was what you said you were going to do or something totally different. So celebrate those wins, big or small. Today's topic is heart health. So, unless you've been told that you have heart disease, it would be easy to think that you don't have to worry about heart health. In truth, though, every day there are people who suffer from heart attacks who didn't even know that they were at risk. The habits we adopt for heart health are really good for our overall health. So, by prioritizing this, we're actually prioritizing a lot of other aspects of our health. And so, it's just a big win all around the board. There is a strong likelihood that if you adopt a new habit for heart health, you're going to also feel better. So today we're going to use the American Heart Association's Life Simple 7 to help us all become more heart health aware. These American Heart Association recommendations can help you to live better. And so the first one is to stop smoking. Smoking increases the risk for heart disease and other chronic conditions. According to the CDC, smoking is a major cause of cardiovascular disease and causes one of every four deaths from cardiovascular disease. Smoking can raise our triglycerides. This is a type of fat in our blood, and they can lower our good cholesterol, our HDL. We want that to be high. This is actually good to have high, this form of cholesterol. And what smoking can do is actually lower that. It also makes our blood sticky and more likely to clot, which can block blood flow to the heart and to the brain. It can damage cells that line the blood vessels, increase buildup of plaque in our blood vessels, and cause thickening and narrowing of the blood vessels. So, bottom line is, it's not good for our blood vessels in a lot of different ways. Breathing secondhand smoke also harms our health. Secondhand smoke causes nearly 34,000 early deaths among non-smokers in the US from coronary heart disease every year. Non-smokers who breathe secondhand smoke at home or at work increase the risk of developing heart disease by 25 to 35%. And breathing secondhand smoke interferes with the normal functioning of the heart, blood, and vascular systems in ways that increase your risk of having a heart attack. Tip number 2 is to manage your blood pressure. One of every 3 adults has high blood pressure. So you can think maybe if you have ever had high blood pressure, if that's something that you deal with, High blood pressure is the single most significant risk factor for heart disease, actually. So the goal is to have blood pressure measure less than 120 over 80. And I always appreciate going over this because no matter how many times I learn about blood pressure, I always seem to forget those numbers and what they mean. So let's talk a little bit about that. Blood pressure is the pressure of blood pushing against the walls of our arteries. Arteries are what carry our blood from our heart to the other parts of our body. Your blood pressure normally rises and falls throughout the day. Blood pressure is measured using two numbers. The first number is called systolic blood pressure. So this measures the pressure in your arteries when your heart beats. The second number, called diastolic blood pressure, measures the pressure in your arteries when your heart rests between beats. High blood pressure usually has no warning signs or symptoms, and many people they do not know that they have it. Let me clarify. Many people do not know that they have high blood pressure. Measuring your blood pressure is the only way to know whether or not you have high blood pressure. Your doctor probably checks this every time that you're at the doctor's office, but if you're not going to the doctor a lot, this is something that could get missed. High blood pressure can damage your health in many ways. It can seriously hurt important organs like your heart, your brain, your kidneys, and your eyes. And high blood pressure can damage your arteries by making them less elastic, which decreases the flow of blood and oxygen to your heart and leads to heart disease. Okay, so we talked about not smoking. We talked about blood pressure. Tip number 3, according to the American Heart Association, is to lose weight if needed. Too much fat, especially around our waist, our midsection, puts you at higher risk for high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes. So losing that excess weight helps us decrease our risk. Now, that's a lot easier said than done, right? So, some tips for successful weight loss are set realistic goals, more short-term goals. It's important to know, we talk about this in this class all the time. It's important to know that big thing that you're working towards. So, like this case, maybe you're thinking, I want to lose 20 pounds, 25, 30, whatever it is. But that's a pretty big and overwhelming goal. And so if we can break that down into smaller goals that help us to get there over time, that is going to probably be more successful. We're going to keep our motivation up and that sort of thing. So break those big goals down. Choose a few days and keep track of what you're eating. Some people like to keep track of it every day, but at least try to check in for a few days just to kind of get some awareness about how much you are actually taking in. And, sometimes you'll be like, wow, I thought I was just eating one serving of cereal, and actually I'm eating like two and a half. And that's a lot more than I realized. So it can really help you kind of have a reality check, get some awareness. I say cereal because that's the one for me that I tend to like way overdo the portions. I love cereal. Number 3, smaller portions can prevent us from eating too much. So one thing I like to do is always eat out of the smaller bowls or smaller plates that I have. I have the big dinner plates and then a smaller plate. Same with the bowls that I have in my kitchen. So I tend to eat off those smaller ones because it kind of tricks your brain into thinking you're eating more than you are. And you don't have to give up all your favorite things. By no means. You should still get to enjoy the things that you eat. It's about learning to make substitutions, practicing moderation. It's about awareness and even mindfulness, like really enjoying those foods and slowing down and eating carefully and being present with your food. And we talked about that way back when we covered mindfulness. And then finally, physical activity is the 5th one on here, and we're going to talk more about that later. So for now, let's go ahead and move on to tip number 4, which is to eat better. A diet that includes a wide variety of fruits and vegetables is a great start to a healthier body. The American Heart Association also recommends that you eat fish twice every week. Oily fish like salmon and mackerel are recommended because they contain omega-3 fatty acids, which may help reduce blood clotting in your arteries and protect against hardening of the arteries. For heart health, limit saturated and trans fat. Choose and prepare foods with little or no salt. So raise your hand, or you can just kind of think in your head, if eating too much sugar is one of the things that you think about when you consider your heart health. Some of you may feel like that's related. Some of you may think that's not related. So Just kind of think about that in your head. In a study published in the Journal of American Medical Association, how to think about the acronym there, for internal medicine, people who obtained 17 to 21% of their calories from added sugar had almost a 40% higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease. So, what I'm saying there is a lot of what they were eating, a lot of the calories they were taking in were actually coming from added sugar. And that increased their risk of dying from cardiovascular disease by nearly 40%. Those who were not getting that much, only 8% of their calories were coming from added sugar, had a lot lower risk of dying from this disease. So the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease was more than double for those who had that large amount of calories coming from added sugar. The higher the sugar intake, the higher the risk. In this 15-year study, both men and women were impacted by added sugar intake. Age, physical activity level, and body mass index did not impact the outcome. It isn't exactly clear how excess sugar harms the heart, but one school of thought is that empty calories, so calories that are mainly coming from added sugar and don't provide a lot of nutrition for our bodies, replace foods that provide those healthier foods with lots of vitamins and minerals and fiber. So the study found that even otherwise healthy eaters who consumed higher levels of sugar still had higher mortality rates from heart disease. So those who did eat a lot of sugar, but the rest of their diet looked pretty healthy, still had that higher risk of dying from heart disease. So the key here, looking at this particular study, is that we do really need to watch the amount of added sugar we're taking in, no matter how healthy our diet is. So what is added sugar? Added sugar refers to sugars and syrups added to foods and drinks when they're prepared. So that's added sugar. Then there's a different kind of sugar that we call naturally occurring sugar. And that sugar is naturally in things like fruit and dairy. But naturally occurring sugar, we are not as worried about because it comes in this package with lots of nutrients, vitamins, minerals, maybe fiber that are really good for our body. It's the added sugar that's not naturally occurring that we're putting into a food or a drink that is more concerning and that we tend to get a lot of in our day. And maybe we don't even realize it because it's not always coming from sweets and treats. It's coming from foods that we don't even think of as being sweet or that we might think of as being really healthy. So sometimes yogurt can have a lot of added sugar. So that's why we need to read our labels, which ironically is kind of what our next slide is about. So how can you tell how much natural and added sugars you are eating? Well, the nutrition label will tell you. The truth of the matter is that you cannot tell by looking at the food label exactly how much added sugar you are getting per serving. The food label does list grams of sugar per serving, but that is both natural and added sugars combined. So that was a really complicated way of saying that you have to look at your label. So you can't just what it's saying is you can't just look at like the ingredients in your food and tell. You can't so you have to use this tool that should be provided on foods so that you can see exactly how much is natural and how much is added. So if you look here, if there's kind of a bolded total carbohydrate on the screen, sort of midway down. Underneath that is dietary fiber, and then beneath that is total sugars. So total sugars doesn't really tell us exactly the whole story, right? If you go the line beneath that, it says includes this particular food, includes 10 grams of added sugar. So of the 12, 10 are added. So 2 grams, if we do a little math, 12 times 10, or sorry, 12 minus 10 is 2. That means 2 grams of the sugar in this food is naturally occurring, but 10, which is most of the sugar, is added. So that can kind of be a way that you can look and see. We eat a lot of like Raisin Bran Crunch, that's an important food to look because there are some naturally occurring sugars from the raisins, but a lot of the sugar in that cereal is added. So it's sugar that's being added during the processing and preparation of that particular food. So I really like to look. I'm so glad the labels now include the added sugar because that's really what we want to pay attention to and make sure we're not getting too much of. The one other thing I want to talk about when we're looking at the label is that they use grams, so like 10 grams added sugar. Sometimes that's hard to understand. Well, what does that mean or what does that look like? So little thing that you can do it or is good to know is that 4 grams of sugar is 1 teaspoon. So when you go to a restaurant, they have those little packets of sugar. That's a teaspoon of sugar. And that's what I like to visualize. So 4 grams equals one of those little packets of sugar. And so if you do have 12 grams of added sugar, you would know that's 3 packets of sugar. And that gives you a kind of a nice little visual. So again, 4 grams of sugar equals 1 teaspoon. Okay, so that can sometimes help if you do that little math to be able to see it a little bit better in your mind. On your handout is a list of words that indicate added sugar. One hint is that words ending in OSE indicate a form of sugar. So on the screen, if you can see this here, there's the kinds of sugar in this particular food are highlighted. Corn syrup, plain old sugar, corn syrup solids, dextrose, high fructose, corn syrup, fructose. Sometimes they use many different kinds of sugar. And this may be to help with texture and taste, but also it can be because ingredients are listed by weight. So if they use lots of different kinds, it lessens how much of each one is in use. And that way it's listed further down the ingredient list. So someone who is trying to eat healthier may be like, oh, well, it's far down. That must mean there's not very much of it. But actually, there just could be a lot of different kinds. So the OSE at the end of a word typically means it's a form of sugar. In one day, how many teaspoons of sugar are okay? Well, according to the American Heart Association, men should get about 9 teaspoons of sugar or less per day, whereas women should get only 6 teaspoons of sugar or less per day, and that's added sugar. So most Americans get somewhere around 22 teaspoons. So we are greatly over consuming what would be a healthy recommendation of added sugar. So just kind of important to be aware of that and know that added sugar hides in things like I talked about yogurt, but like ketchup, barbecue sauce, salad dressing, lunch meat has added sugar usually. So just kind of checking those labels and bringing awareness around that and comparing different things that you get. So because I know some yogurt can have a lot of added sugar, I look at the label at the store before I buy it and make sure I'm choosing something that's lower in sugar. And if you do that for a lot of the items that you take home, you can really reduce how much you're taking in. So going back to our tips, we spent a lot of time on like the weight loss and watching how much added sugar we're taking in. Tip number 5 is controlling our cholesterol. So we want to keep total cholesterol under 200 milligrams per deciliter of blood. So cholesterol can build up in our arteries, increasing the risk factors for heart attack and stroke. Cholesterol is a waxy substance, and your body needs it to build cells and make vitamins and other hormones, but too much can be a problem. Cholesterol comes from 2 sources. Your liver makes all the cholesterol you need. The remainder of the cholesterol in your body comes from foods from animals like meat, poultry, dairy, those sorts of things. These foods are also high in saturated and trans fat. These fats cause your liver to make more cholesterol than it otherwise would. And for some people, this makes their cholesterol into an unhealthy level. So they're overeating it, basically, is what I'm saying. So the 2 types of cholesterol are LDL, which is lousy, it's bad. We don't want as much of that. And then HDL, which is happy. It's good for us. We want it to be high. So too much of the bad kind and not enough of the good kind increases the risk. Cholesterol will slowly build up in the inner walls of our arteries and feed the heart and brain. Yes. So we want that LDL to be low. We want that HDL to be high so that the arteries that are taking things from our heart to the rest of our body and things back, we want that to be clear. We want things to be moving easily through that. And to do that, we need to keep our cholesterol in a healthy place. All right. So the American Heart Association says when it comes to cholesterol, remember this: check, change, and control. Check your cholesterol levels, talking to your doctor, visiting your primary health care provider and getting that checked. It's key to know your numbers to assess your risk. If you need to, then change your diet and lifestyle to help improve your levels and control your cholesterol with help from your doctor if needed. Tip number 6 is to get active. 30 minutes of moderate daily exercise can reduce your risk of heart disease. So there's different kinds of physical activity. We want about 30 minutes of moderate daily exercise to help reduce our risk of heart disease. So the various types of exercise are flexibility, think like yoga, stretching, that sort of thing. We want to get about 10 minutes without stopping, and that might be something we have to work up towards. We usually don't want to do flexibility exercises without some type of warm up. So these can be good after a hot bath or shower or at the end of a workout. Strengthening or resistance exercises is number 2, or lifting weights or using resistance bands or, push-ups. Those are all strengthening exercises. We want to work up towards getting 8 to 10 strengthening moves 2 to 3 days a week. Now, if you're not doing any strength training at all, that's a big jump. So start with a little and work your way up gradually, and that goes for any type of exercise. And then the third type is endurance or aerobic. Sometimes you hear it called cardio or cardiovascular exercise. So that's exercise like swimming, running, walking, biking. It's getting your heart pumping, right? So the goal here is that we get about 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise every week. And so again, that's going to look like about 20 to 30 minutes of exercise each day. A combination of all three is going to be the best thing that we can do, but you got to start somewhere. So don't let these numbers overwhelm you. All movement is good movement. Taking a class or finding a friend to help you get started is a really good way to kind of take that first step into getting more movement into your life. And then tip number 7 is reducing your blood sugar. So diabetes is a major risk for cardiovascular disease. Over time, high blood sugar can damage our blood vessels and the nerves that control our heart. People with diabetes are also more likely to have other conditions that raise the risk of heart disease. High blood pressure, too much LDL cholesterol, and high triglycerides. So the final thing that I want us to think about today, as we've gone through all those 7 tips from the American Heart Association, are really think about, what do you want your heart to be healthy enough for? What is your why? Maybe it's, family or, something like where you volunteer, something you're passionate about. It's your job. It's what do you want to live a high quality life for? Because sometimes our motivation goes up and down, and it's hard to go out and do the exercise or watch what we're eating or read the food labels. And so coming back to that why and having that really clear in your mind can sometimes be helpful. So if you'd like to take some time to reflect on that and write it down and maybe put it on your fridge or where you see it often, please do that. Because I think this can be a really important when it's just hard to get yourself to do the things that you know you should do to take care of yourself. If you read that why, sometimes it can snap us back into those healthy habits. So remember that small steps can make a big difference when it comes to your health. There was a famous study conducted in London in which researchers followed drivers and ticket takers on a double-decker bus for a period of time. They found that the bus drivers had more heart attacks than the ticket takers. And this is because the ticket takers would actually get to move around a little bit more in the bus, whereas the drivers were just seated the whole time. So it wasn't like the ticket takers were getting a lot more movement. They were standing more though, and there was some walking. Just that little bit of difference lowered their risk of heart disease compared to people who were sedentary or sitting most of the day. So again, small steps make big changes, and we can do this together. So with that, I want you to take some time now and set your goal for this month. Be very specific. What are you going to do? How much? When? What's your confidence level? Who's going to support you in this goal? And really try to write it down if you can. Um, that's very helpful. And then, of course, putting it somewhere you can see it and thinking about how am I going to put this in my calendar? All those things are going to help us be more successful. If you are in a group setting and you have time, go around, let everybody talk about the goal that they set. And just remember that you have lots of resources that can help push you through. If you don't, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to try and help keep you accountable as well as myself too, right? Because I'm in this as well. So with that, I just want to say change is hard, but there's strength in numbers. Thank you all for being here today and listening to this lesson. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time.